Hi, my name is Bannon. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Tennessee, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about Cormac McCarthy, who he is and why he's an important and interesting author, particularly for Tennesseans. Cormac McCarthy was born Charles McCarthy in Providence, Rhode Island, but relocated with his family at an early age to the Knoxville, Tennessee area. His father worked for the Tennessee Valley Authority, and the family lived in the Sequoia Hills area and then in South Knoxville. Cormac McCarthy went on to attend Knoxville Catholic High School and then the University of Tennessee on two separate occasions in the 1950s with an Air Force stint in between. And he doesn't actually graduate from the University of Tennessee, but he does publish his first two works of fiction in our literary magazine, The Phoenix. And already in these early works, we see the themes that Cormac McCarthy will be interested in for the duration of his literary career, so far as we know. And that is the interplay between life and death and violence. This interest in violence as a kind of generative force, as something that is a thing that we struggle with, but that leads to rebirth, that leads to positivity ultimately. And so when he publishes his first novel, The Orchard Keeper, in 1965, it features a young protagonist who grows up without a father because his father has been killed, but unbeknownst to our young protagonist, his father actually attacked another man and was this other man killed him in self-defense. And just to add a further twist onto this, our young protagonist, John Wesley Radnor, goes on to befriend and be mentored by this man who had killed his father. And he never knows that this is the man who killed his father in self-defense. After this, he goes on and writes three more novels that take place in the Appalachian region: Outer Dark, Child of God, and his Knoxville novel, Suttree. And we tend to group all these novels together and call them the Tennessee novels or the Appalachian novels. And again, what McCarthy seems to be interested in throughout is not just death and darkness and violence for its own sake, but in order to ask these questions about humanity, about who we are. In Child of God, for instance, we have our main character, Lester Ballard, who's a very sick individual, and he murders all of these women and keeps their bodies in an underground cavern. And the question that McCarthy seems to be asking is Lester Ballard, in spite of all of these horrible misdeeds, is he a human being just like the rest of us? Is he a child of God just like all of us? And what would that mean if that's part of who we are? If the most violent and sick individuals also are part of what it means to be human. And so after these first four novels, his interest kind of shifts regionally to the Southwest. And his first Southwestern novel is called Blood Meridian, or The Evening Redness in the West. And this novel contains his first fully formed villain, the judge, who embraces this idea of life as violence. The judge says, "War is God." And this novel wins him great critical acclaim. And we see that McCarthy, though he's a reclusive author in many ways, he gives an interview in the 90s and he says, "There is no such thing as life without bloodshed." And so again, we see this idea that violence is somehow a part of life. It's unpleasant and horrifying. And Blood Meridian is an ultra-violent novel, but in the end, does it lead to something? Does life go on after that in strange ways? And so it's really not until the early 90s, with the publication of All the Pretty Horses, that McCarthy gains popular recognition. That book wins the National Book Award and is made into a film that was not very successful, starring Matt Damon. Following this, he goes on to publish the works for which he's widely known now: No Country for Old Men and The Road, both of which are made into popular and successful films. No Country for Old Men actually started as a screenplay, and so it's fitting that it's made into a film by the Coen brothers. And the Road is selected by Oprah to be included in her book club. And McCarthy even goes on and gives this rare interview with Oprah. So McCarthy, a very popular author now, but really has roots and a long career prior to that in Tennessee, where he's wrestling with these dark themes. And it's very fitting that in downtown Knoxville, on a pedestrian walkway, we have this quotation from McCarthy: "For each fire is all fires, and the first fire and the last ever to be." So McCarthy, very, very interesting and important writer, and worth considering his Knoxville, his Tennessee roots when thinking about his legacy and the themes that he explores in his fiction.